Have you ever wondered what people in the ancient world did to make themselves feel beautiful? Some of these rituals were fascinating, while others were downright strange. From powders made of crushed gemstones to skincare routines that would shock us today, history is filled with bizarre and curious practices that reveal how far humans have gone in the name of beauty. Welcome to History for Sleep. This channel is here for anyone who struggles to quiet their mind at night. Here we gently guide you through the pages of history stories that soothe, calm, and help carry you into sleep. Tonight, we'll explore the world's most unusual beauty rituals across ancient cultures. And along the way, we'll discover what these customs reveal about people's values, beliefs, and even their fears. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future journeys into the calming side of history. And in the comments, tell me what kinds of stories you'd like to hear, or even when you enjoy listening, whether it's before bed. Your thoughts will help guide where we travel next. So now, get comfortable. Let your body relax, and let your mind drift back in time to a world where beauty was more than skin deep, and the rituals were as mysterious as the people who created them. Chapter 1. The origins of beauty rituals long before the invention of mirrors, before perfumes were bottled in glass vials, and before powders were pressed neatly into containers, humans were already fascinated by appearance. The pursuit of beauty is as old as civilization itself, though its forms and meanings have shifted with every culture and every age. To understand the bizarre and fascinating rituals of the ancient world, we must first look back at where these customs began, the earliest evidence of humanity's relationship with adornment and the idea of beauty. Imagine for a moment a group of people gathered around a fire in a dark cave tens of thousands of years ago. Their lives were simple, centered on survival, hunting, gathering, sheltering from storms. Yet even then, they were painting their bodies with red ochre, tracing lines across their skin, and decorating themselves with beads made from shells and animal bones. These earliest signs of adornment suggest that humans were not content with simply existing. They wanted to express something more, to tell stories with their bodies, to stand out, and perhaps even to feel closer to the spiritual world. The use of ochre is one of the oldest known beauty rituals. Archaeologists have uncovered pieces of red ochre pigment in burial sites dating back over 100,000 years. It seems that this mineral powder, ground into a fine dust, was used not only for art on cave walls, but also for painting the skin and hair. Some believe it symbolized blood and life, while others suggest it was seen as protective, warding off illness or danger. Whatever the reason, its application was an early fusion of beauty, ritual, and belief. Adornment also carried deep social meaning. Necklaces made of shells have been discovered in regions far from the sea, suggesting that people carried these treasures across great distances, trading them as valuable items. To wear such ornaments was to announce status, connection, or perhaps affection. Even in these distant times, beauty was not just about the individual. It was about community, recognition, and meaning. As humanity moved from caves into the earliest settlements, beauty rituals became even more sophisticated. Ancient tools made of stone and bone show signs of polishing, scraping, and grinding. Some were likely used to prepare pigments, while others may have shaped hair or smoothed the skin. Evidence from burial sites reveals combs, beads, and decorated objects placed carefully beside the deceased, hinting that beauty and grooming were important not only in life, but also in the journey beyond. It is easy to picture a woman of the Stone Age carefully weaving flowers into her hair, or a man painting his face with streaks of red and black before a ritual. These acts were not shallow. They carried weight and meaning. Beauty was tied to survival, to faith, and to the eternal human desire to transform the body into something more than flesh. Over time, as farming developed and villages grew, new rituals emerged. Plants were crushed into pastes, oils were extracted from seeds, and smoke from fragrant wood was used to scent hair and clothing. These early experiments laid the foundation for the beauty practices we recognize across later civilizations. A plant that soothed the skin might become a treasured cosmetic. A fragrant oil might be preserved for ceremonies or traded as a luxury. The line between health and beauty was thin, and often the two were the same. In Mesopotamia, one of the cradles of civilization, the people of this fertile land experimented with flowers, resins, and herbs, distilling their essences into substances that were worn on the skin or burned in temples. These scents were not only pleasing, they were thought to connect humans with the divine, to cleanse both body and spirit. To adorn oneself with fragrance was to participate in a ritual that was at once practical, aesthetic, and spiritual. As writing developed, records began to describe beauty practices in greater detail. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia mention recipes for creams, salves, and ointments. Some were designed to soften the skin, others to treat blemishes, and still others to prepare the body for religious ceremonies. Here, we see clearly the merging of medicine, beauty, and ritual, a tradition that would continue for millennia across countless cultures. The Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and many others would later refine these ideas, but the foundation was always the same. Beauty rituals were more than decoration. They were expressions of belief, identity, and connection. To apply pigment, to scent the skin, or to weave an ornament into the hair was to engage in an act that carried meaning far beyond its physical effect. Even in prehistory, there seems to have been a fascination with transformation. A face painted with stripes of ochre was no longer an ordinary face. It was something more, perhaps a symbol of bravery, a marker of status, or a gesture to the gods. This longing to become something beyond oneself is at the heart of beauty rituals, whether ancient or modern. When we look at these earliest practices, we can see the beginning of a story that stretches across every civilization. Beauty was never just about pleasing the eye. It was about shaping identity, commanding respect, and navigating the unseen forces of the world. It was about community, ritual, and power. As you settle into the rhythm of this story, imagine those first hands grinding pigment, those first necklaces strung with beads, and those first fires flickering against painted skin. The journey into bizarre beauty rituals has begun, and it starts here in the deep past, where humanity first discovered the power of adornment. Chapter 2. Ancient Egypt's Obsession with Cosmetics. The sun rose over the golden sands of Egypt, casting long shadows across the Nile. In the coolness of early morning, before the heat of the desert pressed down, men and women alike began their rituals of cleansing and adornment. To the Egyptians, beauty was not only a matter of appearance, it was a reflection of health, spirituality, and harmony with the divine. Few cultures in history have been as devoted to cosmetics and personal care, and their fascination has left behind traces so vivid that we can still imagine them thousands of years later. Perhaps the most iconic image of Egyptian beauty is the dark, almond-shaped eyes lined with kohl. This black substance, made from galena or malachite mixed with oils and fats, was carefully applied with slender sticks or brushes. To us, it might look like eyeliner, but to the Egyptians, it was far more than decoration. They believed kohl protected the eyes from the glare of the sun, warded off infections, and even shielded them from evil spirits. When you picture the sharp, dramatic gaze of ancient queens and pharaohs, you are seeing a beauty ritual deeply tied to both health and magic. Red ochre, ground into a fine powder, was used for lips and cheeks. Women and sometimes men dabbed it gently onto the skin to bring warmth and vitality to their faces. In a land where life and death were ever present in the desert landscape, this touch of color symbolized life and energy. To wear it was to appear vibrant, glowing, and full of vitality under the bright Egyptian sun. Perfume was another treasure of the Nile. Egyptians perfected the art of blending fragrant resins, herbs, and oils into balms and unguents. Frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, and lotus were some of the ingredients they prized. These scents were applied to the body, earned in temples, and offered to the gods. A perfumed body was not only pleasing to others, but also a sign of purity and closeness to the divine. Even in death, perfumes were used to anoint the body, ensuring the deceased would be welcomed into the afterlife with fragrance and honor. Bathing was also a cornerstone of Egyptian life. Though they did not have communal baths like the Romans would later create, Egyptians valued cleanliness highly. They bathed daily, often in the cool waters of the Nile or in basins within their homes. Afterward, they rubbed scented oils onto their skin to protect it from the harsh desert climate. Cleanliness was not just practical, it was sacred. To present oneself in an unclean state before the gods would have been unthinkable. Hair, too, was treated with care. Wealthy Egyptians wore elaborate wigs made from human hair or plant fibers, styled with braids and adorned with beads or gold. These wigs were perfumed and carefully maintained, serving both fashion and hygiene. Shaving the head and wearing a wig kept pests at bay while also allowing for endless styles and adornments. Children's heads were often shaved, leaving just a single lock of hair, symbolizing youth and protection. Milk baths were said to have been favored by queens like Cleopatra. Whether myth or reality, the image endures. A ruler reclining in warm milk, said to soften and rejuvenate the skin. Honey, too, was used in skincare, its natural antibacterial properties making it a prized ingredient in creams and salves. The blending of practical health benefits with the pursuit of beauty was a hallmark of Egyptian rituals. The Egyptians also paid close attention to nails and hands. Henna, a reddish dye made from the leaves of the henna plant, was used to decorate fingers and palms. These patterns were not only beautiful, but also protective, believed to bring good fortune and ward off harm. To adorn the hands was to connect the body's most active parts with symbols of blessing and beauty. Perhaps most fascinating is how universal these practices were. Beauty in Egypt was not limited to women. Men also applied kohl, perfumes, and oils. Pharaohs painted their eyes, priests anointed themselves with fragrance, and laborers used simple oils to protect their skin. Beauty was a shared ritual, woven into the daily lives of all classes. In death, these rituals continued. Tombs have been found stocked with jars of oils, pallets for grinding pigments, and tools for application. The deceased was to enter the next world prepared, adorned, and protected. Beauty was eternal, reaching beyond life itself. As you imagine the soft light of dawn over the Nile, picture the slow, deliberate motions of someone dipping a stick into a small pot of coal, drawing a line across the eyelid with care. Imagine the fragrance of lotus and cinnamon filling the air, the coolness of water on the skin, the weight of a perfumed wig resting on the head. These were not shallow vanities, but acts of devotion to self, to society, and to the divine. The Egyptians remind us that beauty is not only about how we look, but also about how we connect to the world around us. To them, beauty was protection, health, and spiritual harmony. Even the most bizarre of their rituals, like bathing in milk or painting their eyes, with minerals, were deeply tied to their understanding of life and the cosmos. And so, in the golden sands of Egypt, the story of beauty became both art and ritual, a legacy that still captivates us to this day. Chapter 3. Greece and the Pursuit of the Ideal Body. As the winds swept gently across the marble temples of ancient Greece, beauty was not merely about paints or perfumes. It was about balance, proportion, and harmony. To the Greeks, beauty was a reflection of the order of the universe itself. The human body was seen as a mirror of divine perfection, and every ritual of grooming or adornment was a step toward embodying that ideal. Greek philosophy gave beauty a special place. Thinkers like Plato and Aristotle wrote about symmetry, proportion, and the golden mean, a balance that represented not only physical attractiveness, but also moral virtue. To be beautiful was to reflect order, reason, and health. And so, beauty rituals in Greece were less about extravagance and more about striving for an ideal form, skin clear, body fit, and spirit disciplined. The Greek pursuit of pale, flawless skin is one of the most curious. For women especially, a fair complexion was prized, symbolizing wealth and refinement. Those who worked in the fields were tanned by the sun, but the aristocratic women of Athens and Corinth painted their faces with white powders made from chalk or even lead. Though dangerous, these substances created the pale glow associated with nobility. On top of this base, they sometimes added touches of red pigment for lips and cheeks, crafting a look that blended simplicity with elegance. Olive oil was a cornerstone of Greek beauty and health. It was rubbed generously onto the body after bathing, giving the skin a soft sheen and protecting it from dryness. Athletes in particular covered themselves in oil before competitions, not only for protection, but also to emphasize the beauty of the muscular form. The gleaming bodies of runners, wrestlers, and discus throwers were celebrated in art and admired in life. For the Greeks, strength and symmetry were inseparable from beauty. Perfumes were also highly valued. Derived from herbs, flowers, and resins, these fragrances were crafted with care, often mixed with oils to be applied directly to the skin. Scents of rose, iris, and marjoram floated through banquets, festivals, and religious ceremonies. A fragrant person was seen as refined, healthy, and pleasing both to mortals and to the gods. Hair held symbolic importance as well. Men often wore their hair short, while women grew theirs long, arranging it in braids and coils. Hair was oiled, perfumed, and sometimes lightened with washes of vinegar or sun exposure. Wreaths of flowers or leaves, especially laurel and olive, were worn for special occasions, connecting the wearer to the beauty of nature and to divine favor. Cosmetics were not only for women. Men also engaged in rituals of grooming, though often with simpler means. Beards were shaped with care, sometimes left long to show wisdom, other times trimmed to demonstrate discipline. In the gymnasia, where young men trained and philosophers debated, the body was displayed, admired, and sculpted to match the Greek ideal. Physical beauty was intertwined with mental cultivation, the harmony of body and soul. Yet not all practices were so serene. Some Greek beauty rituals were strange or even dangerous. The pursuit of pale skin through lead-based powders caused slow poisoning, though people of the time did not yet understand the risks. Some women used burnt cork to darken their eyebrows, or added false hair to thicken them, striving to achieve balance in their features. Even then, beauty could demand sacrifice. Bathing was another ritual of importance. Public baths, though simpler than the Roman ones that would come later, were spaces of cleansing and relaxation. Bathers washed with sand or pumice, then anointed themselves with oil, which was scraped off with a curved tool called a strigil. This practice removed dirt and dead skin, leaving the body refreshed and smooth. The rhythmic motions of oiling and scraping were not only practical but almost meditative, part of the Greek devotion to discipline and care of the self. Jewelry, too, was part of Greek adornment. Earrings of gold, necklaces of beads, and armlets of bronze or silver were worn on festive occasions. Though less extravagant than in some other cultures, these ornaments highlighted the features of the wearer, emphasizing beauty without overwhelming it. The balance of moderation was always in mind. Even funerary rituals reflected the importance of beauty. The dead were washed, anointed with oils, and adorned with wreaths or ornaments before burial. To pass into the afterlife was to go prepared, clean, and honored. Beauty was not merely for the living. It was a mark of dignity that accompanied one's spirit into eternity. As you imagine the marble courtyards of Athens, picture a young woman seated by a window, carefully grinding pigments for her face, or a man at the gymnasium, oiling his body before a contest. Hear the quiet scrape of the strigil, the soft fragrance of rose oil carried on the breeze, the distant echo of philosophers discussing harmony and virtue. To the Greeks, beauty was more than surface. It was the echo of a universe shaped by balance and order. And so, their rituals remind us that the pursuit of beauty has always been entwined with deeper meaning. Even in their more bizarre practices, powders that poisoned, oils that glistened, or wreaths that wilted, the Greeks sought not just to look appealing, but to become living reflections of their ideals. To be beautiful was to approach the divine, to embody the perfection of form and spirit. As the night settles over the ruins of temples and amphitheaters, the whisper of those ideals still lingers. Beauty, to the Greeks, was harmony, and in their rituals, both strange and familiar, they reached for the timeless balance between body, mind, and soul. Chapter 4. Rome's elaborate baths and cosmetics. If ancient Greece celebrated harmony and proportion, Rome celebrated luxury and excess. To walk through the streets of imperial Rome was to be surrounded by color, scent, and spectacle. Beauty was not merely a personal matter here. It was a statement of power, wealth, and social standing. And nowhere was this more visible than in the Roman obsession with baths and cosmetics. Imagine the grandeur of a Roman bathhouse. Marble halls stretched wide, mosaics glittered underfoot, and the sound of splashing water echoed off high-domed ceilings. The baths were not simply places to wash. They were centers of social life, where senators, merchants, soldiers, and citizens gathered daily. There were hot rooms and cold pools, scented oils and massage tables, exercise yards and libraries. The bath was a theater of beauty and ritual, a place where the body was polished, perfumed, and displayed. The bathing ritual itself was long and deliberate. Romans began with exercise in the palestra, loosening muscles and raising the sweat. Next came the tepidarium, a warm room to prepare the body. From there, bathers moved to the caldarium, the steaming hot chamber where heat opened the pores. After sweating, they plunged into the frigidarium, a cold pool that shocked the body awake. Finally, attendants scraped the skin with strigils, removing oil, dirt, and sweat, leaving the body refreshed and gleaming. To finish, the skin was anointed with fragrant oils, massaged into every limb. For the wealthy, beauty did not end with bathing. Cosmetics were as essential to daily life as food and clothing. Roman women painted their faces with powders to lighten the skin, much like the Greeks before them. But the Romans were even more extravagant. They used chalk, white lard, and vinegar solutions to create the pale look associated with nobility. Red ochre brightened lips and cheeks, soot or ashes darkened eyebrows, and saffron lent a golden glow. Some women even experimented with dangerous mixtures of mercury or antimony, unaware of the harm these substances caused. Perfumes were another indulgence. Rome imported vast quantities of frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, and rare oils from distant lands. Perfume was burned in temples, splashed onto clothes, and poured into the baths. Pliny the Elder, the Roman writer, complained about the extravagance, noting that some women seemed to carry entire storerooms of fragrance on their persons. To smell delightful was to announce refinement and wealth. Hair, too, was a canvas for elaborate ritual. Roman women curled their hair in intricate styles, using heated irons and pins to build towering shapes. Wigs made of blonde hair, imported from Germany, or red locks from Gaul, were highly fashionable. The wealthy employed slaves skilled in hairstyling, who spent hours arranging braids, coils, and buns. Hair dye was also common. Dark tresses could be lightened with mixtures of vinegar and goat fat, or colored with herbs and minerals. Men, meanwhile, preferred shorter styles, but many dyed their hair or beards to appear youthful. Jewelry completed the display. Gold, pearls, and gemstones adorned ears, wrists, and fingers. Rings were especially important in Roman culture, serving not only as decoration, but as symbols of status, authority, and family. A well-dressed Roman woman glittered with ornament. Her beauty proclaimed to all who saw her. But Roman beauty rituals were not confined to the living. In funerary practices, the dead were washed, perfumed, and adorned before burial. Tombs were stocked with combs, mirrors, and jars of cosmetics, ensuring that beauty followed the deceased into the afterlife. To be beautiful was to be remembered with honor. Not all of Rome's beauty practices were pleasant. Some were strange, even disturbing to us today. One recipe for a face mask called for crocodile dung mixed with mud and vinegar. Another suggested grinding pearls into powder and applying it to the skin for brightness. Donkey's milk was recommended as a bath additive, believed to soften and whiten the skin. These odd treatments, costly and bizarre, reveal the extremes Romans embraced in their pursuit of beauty. Even men were not exempt. Though their cosmetics were simpler, Roman men oiled their skin, perfumed their bodies, and cared for their hair and nails. To appear well-groomed was a sign of dignity and respectability. Senators and emperors alike valued personal appearance, knowing it reflected not only on themselves, but also on the state they represented. When night fell over Rome, the scents of perfumes lingered in the air, drifting from banquet halls and theaters. Women reclined on couches, their faces painted, and their hair glistening with oils. Men returned from the baths, their bodies clean and refreshed, their skin gleaming under lamplight. Beauty in Rome was performance, ritual, and power theater played out on the stage of everyday life. As you imagine the marble halls of the baths, the chatter of citizens, the splash of water, and the soft fragrance of rose oil filling the air, remember that for the Romans, beauty was more than vanity. It was a reflection of civilization itself. Cleanliness, adornment, and extravagance were the marks of empire, as enduring as the aqueducts and amphitheaters they built. And though some of their practices strike us as bizarre, the Roman devotion to beauty lives on in echoes in the perfumes we wear, the baths we take, and the rituals of self-care that remain part of human life to this day. Chapter 5. India's Ayurvedic Beauty Practices. As dawn breaks over the plains of India, a soft golden light falls across fields of turmeric and fragrant groves of sandalwood. The air carries the scent of jasmine and neem, plants that for thousands of years have been part of a unique tradition of beauty and healing. In India, beauty was never just about surface appearance. It was woven deeply into health, balance, and the spiritual practice of Ayurveda. Ayurveda, meaning the science of life, is an ancient system of medicine that dates back more than 3,000 years. It teaches that health and beauty arise from harmony between the body, mind, and spirit. In this view, cosmetics were not separate from medicine, nor was adornment separated from care. Every ritual of beauty was also a ritual of wellness, and every ingredient was chosen not only for its appearance, but for its deeper properties. Turmeric, a bright yellow root still celebrated today, was one of the most important elements in these rituals. Ground into a fine powder, it was mixed with water, milk, or oils to create pastes applied to the skin. Its properties were believed to purify, heal, and protect. Brides were often adorned with turmeric before their weddings, their skin glowing with the golden hue of the ritual. This practice was more than cosmetic, it was a blessing, a preparation for the sacred transition into married life. Sandalwood was another treasured ingredient. Its fine powder, fragrant and cool to the touch, was blended into pastes and applied to the face and body. Sandalwood was thought to calm the skin, soothe the spirit, and invite tranquility. In the heat of India, such cooling remedies were both practical and symbolic. To wear sandalwood was to carry serenity upon the skin. Henna, derived from the leaves of the henna plant, was used to stain the hands, feet, and hair. The intricate designs painted on brides and celebrants were not merely decorative, they carried symbolic meaning, invoking protection, fertility, and good fortune. Henna was also used as a natural hair dye, giving a reddish tint that was admired for its vibrancy. Even today, these patterns continue as part of Indian weddings and festivals, a living link to an ancient practice. Oils played a central role in Ayurvedic beauty. Sesame oil, coconut oil, and almond oil were massaged into the hair and skin, nourishing the body and calming the senses. The ritual of Abhyanga, or oil massage, was both beautifying and healing. It was said to restore balance to the body's energies, improve circulation, and maintain youthfulness. Hair, in particular, was treated with care-oiled, braided, and perfumed with jasmine or rose. It was considered a crown of beauty. Makeup, too, had its place. Kyle, or kohl, was used to line the eyes, not only to enhance their appearance, but also to protect against infections and the harsh glare of the sun. The deep black lines framed the eyes, making them appear larger and more expressive. The belief in Kyle's protective qualities meant that even infants sometimes had their eyes lined, a gesture of both beauty and care. Fragrance was also a key element. Oils infused with flowers, such as jasmine, rose, and lotus, were applied to the skin and woven into the hair. Incense perfumed homes and temples, creating an atmosphere of harmony. The connection between beauty and the senses was holistic sight. Touch, smell, and spirit were all embraced in the rituals of adornment. Ayurvedic texts offer detailed recipes for beauty treatments, pastes of honey and milk to soften the skin, powders of neem to cleanse and protect, masks of chickpea flour to brighten the complexion. These preparations were shared from mother to daughter, healer to apprentice, becoming part of the fabric of daily life. Unlike some cultures that reserved beauty for the elite, Ayurveda made beauty a practice for all, tied to wellness and balance. Spirituality was never far away. Many rituals carried symbolic meanings beyond the body. A bride painted with henna was not only beautiful, she was blessed, protected, and welcomed into a new life. A woman scented with sandalwood was not only fragrant, she embodied calmness and devotion. To follow Ayurvedic beauty practices was to align with the rhythms of the universe, honoring the body as a sacred vessel of the soul. Of course, some practices might seem unusual to us today. Mixtures of herbs, minerals, and animal products were tested and applied in the pursuit of balance. Some used ashes or even crushed gemstones, believing these substances carried powerful energies. The blending of medicine, beauty, and mysticism gave rise to treatments that were as symbolic as they were practical. As night falls across India, the rituals continue. A woman sits in lamplight, massaging oil into her hair with slow, deliberate movements. A bride, surrounded by laughter and song, extends her hands as henna is painted in swirling patterns across her skin. The air fills with the scent of sandalwood and rose, the quiet hum of prayers rising with the smoke of incense. These scenes, ancient yet timeless, show how beauty in India was never only about appearances. It was about care, balance, and spirit. In the Ayurvedic tradition, beauty was health, and health was harmony. The bizarre and the practical blended seamlessly. As turmeric stained the skin, oils softened the hair, and patterns of henna carried blessings across generations. To practice beauty was to honor life itself, and in that harmony, a deeper radiance was found. Chapter 6. China's Ancient Secrets in the Heart of Ancient China. Beauty was not only admired, it was a reflection of harmony, virtue, and social order. Across centuries of dynasties, rituals of adornment and care became woven into daily life, guided by philosophy, tradition, and a deep reverence for balance. Some of these practices were elegant and refined, while others strike us today as strange, even painful. Together, they reveal a culture where beauty was as much about the spirit as the body. One of the most enduring symbols of Chinese beauty was the pursuit of porcelain-like skin. A pale, flawless complexion was considered the height of refinement, representing purity, nobility, and distance from labor in the fields. Women used rice powder to lighten their faces, carefully applied in soft layers to achieve the desired glow. This ritual, repeated day after day, turned the skin into a canvas of delicacy. Though the powders sometimes contained harmful minerals, the ideal remained constant: pale skin as a mark of grace. Jade, the precious stone treasured in Chinese culture, was more than a symbol of wealth. It was believed to carry protective and healing properties. Small jade rollers were used to massage the face, thought to improve circulation, reduce puffiness, and keep the skin youthful. These tools, still echoed in modern beauty routines today, were part of a tradition that saw jade as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. To touch the skin with jade was to invite purity and balance. Hair, too, was central to Chinese ideals of beauty. Long, glossy hair was admired as a sign of health and virtue. Women often oiled their hair with fragrant infusions of flowers or herbs, combing it until it shone. Elaborate hairstyles emerged, adorned with pins of gold, jade, or carved bone. During certain dynasties, towering arrangements of hair rose above the head, secured with ornaments that glittered in lamplight. For men as well, hair was a reflection of discipline and respect. To care for it properly was to show devotion to tradition and to family. Yet not all beauty practices were so gentle. Perhaps the most infamous was the ritual of foot binding, which began around the Song dynasty. Small feet, often called lotus feet, were considered a mark of beauty, elegance, and desirability. To achieve this, young girls' feet were tightly bound, breaking bones and reshaping them into an unnaturally small form. The process was agonizing, yet it endured for centuries, becoming a deeply rooted symbol of status and refinement. Women who endured it walked with a swaying step that was admired as delicate and graceful, though the practice left lifelong pain. It stands as one of history's most extreme examples of beauty demanding sacrifice. Cosmetics also flourished. Rouge made from safflower or cinnabar was brushed onto cheeks and lips, adding a subtle flush. Eyebrows were shaped into fashionable arches, sometimes painted in colors of green or blue. The style of eyebrows shifted with dynasties, thick and bold in one era, thin and delicate in another. A woman's face was a canvas that reflected not only her beauty, but also the aesthetic ideals of her time. Fragrance held spiritual importance. Incense burned in homes and temples, carrying prayers upward with its smoke. Perfumed sachets of herbs, tied with silk cords, were worn against the body, warding off evil spirits and scenting the skin. Flowers like peony and osmanthus were infused into oils, their sweet fragrance lingering through the day. To surround oneself with scent was to cultivate inner and outer harmony. Clothing added another layer of adornment. Silk, the treasure of China, was dyed in rich colors and embroidered with patterns of birds, flowers, and clouds. A person's garments, combined with hair, jewelry, and cosmetics, created a complete expression of beauty and status. For women at court, appearance was a political statement as much as a personal one. To embody the beauty ideals of the dynasty was to embody refinement, loyalty, and power. Even in death, beauty remained essential. Tombs of noble women have been found with combs, powders, mirrors, and ornaments placed carefully beside them. The afterlife was to be entered with grace, adorned as if attending a courtly gathering. To go unprepared was unthinkable. When night fell in ancient China, the rituals of beauty did not cease. A woman might sit by lamplight, a jade comb in hand, slowly smoothing fragrant oil through her long black hair. Another might apply rice powder, creating a soft pale glow even under flickering flames. The quiet air carried the scent of incense, the murmur of prayers, the rustle of silk garments being folded away. These scenes were part of a world where beauty was devotion to balance, to family, and to the ideals of a culture that valued refinement above all. The story of beauty in China is one of contrasts. The delicate touch of jade against the skin and the harsh pain of bound feet. The light sweep of rice powder and the heavy weight of elaborate hairstyles. Some rituals soothe us even now, while others remind us of the cost that beauty once demanded. Yet in all of them, we see a pursuit of harmony, a reflection of values that connected body, spirit, and society. And so, in the whisper of silk, the gleam of jade, and the pale glow of powdered faces, the ancient secrets of Chinese beauty live on echoes of a civilization that saw beauty not just as vanity, but as a form of order, devotion, and grace. Chapter 7. Japan's Rituals of Elegance in Ancient Japan. Beauty was not a matter of excess or grandeur, but of refinement, subtlety, and restraint. Where Rome favored extravagance and Egypt reveled in bold colors, Japan pursued an elegance that was quiet, deliberate, and deeply symbolic. Beauty was intertwined with tradition, ritual, and the fleeting philosophy of impermanence, a concept known as wabi-sabi, which found grace in simplicity and transience. One of the most striking features of Japanese beauty was the use of light face makeup. Women of the Heian period, particularly those of the court, painted their faces with a thick layer of rice powder mixed with water. The effect was dramatic, transforming the face into a pale, luminous surface, smooth and otherworldly. Onto this canvas, red pigments were added to the lips and cheeks, and black soot was brushed onto the eyebrows. This look was not designed to mimic nature, but to create a vision of elegance that elevated the wearer beyond the ordinary. The whiteness symbolized purity and refinement, qualities prized in the courtly world. Another unusual practice was ohaguro, the ritual of blackening the teeth. Made from a mixture of iron filings, vinegar, and tea, the solution stained teeth a glossy black. To us, it may seem strange, even unsettling, but in its time, it was considered a mark of beauty, maturity, and sophistication. Blackened teeth contrasted strikingly with the whiteness of the face, creating a deliberate and refined appearance. Married women, nobles, and later, even samurai adopted the practice, which carried both aesthetic and cultural meaning. Hair, long and flowing, was another hallmark of Japanese beauty. Heian women often grew their hair to extraordinary lengths, sometimes trailing well past the floor. This was not simply a matter of vanity, but a reflection of patience, discipline, and devotion. Hair was carefully washed, combed, and perfumed with incense, a ritual that could take hours. To glimpse a lady walking with her long hair flowing behind her was to witness an ideal of elegance that embodied the values of her society. Fragrance played an important role as well, but in a distinctly Japanese way. Incense was not only burned in temples, but also used in personal rituals. People participated in kodo, the art of appreciating incense, in which subtle differences in scents were savored and discussed. Clothing was perfumed with incense smoke, creating a lingering fragrance that followed the wearer. This practice was less about overpowering scent and more about cultivating an aura of refinement. Clothing, too, became a medium of beauty. Layered robes of silk, known as genihito, were worn by noblewomen, each layer chosen carefully for its color and seasonal significance. The combination of hues was an art form, reflecting taste, knowledge, and sensitivity to nature. A glance at the way the sleeves and hems revealed their colors was enough to judge a woman's refinement. In this way, beauty was expressed not only in the body, but in harmony with the natural world. There were also rituals that blurred the line between beauty and spirituality. Tea ceremonies, for instance, were not cosmetic in nature, but they reflected the same ideals of elegance, precision, and discipline. Every gesture, every motion, carried meaning, embodying the Japanese sense that beauty was not only what one wore, but how one moved, spoke, and lived. Yet not all practices were serene. Some were unusual, even extreme. Eyebrows were sometimes plucked away entirely and repainted higher on the forehead in delicate arcs, creating a more ethereal look. This fashion shifted across periods, sometimes favoring thicker brows, sometimes thin, but always deliberate. The combination of painted brows, white powdered skin, blackened teeth, and crimson lips created a beauty that was striking, almost mask-like, a reflection of ideals distinct from naturalism. These rituals extended into death as well. Women were often adorned with their cosmetics and robes before burial, ensuring that they departed the world with dignity and refinement. The values of elegance and subtlety carried beyond life itself. As evening settled in a Heian palace, imagine the glow of lanterns against painted faces, the soft rustle of layered silk robes, the faint fragrance of incense drifting through the air. A woman sits, combing her long, shining hair with slow, careful strokes. Another applies white powder, then stains her lips with crimson. A samurai, seated nearby, dips his teeth into the blackening solution, preparing himself for the world with the same sense of ritual. Japanese beauty was never about excess. It was about creating an atmosphere of grace, where every detail, from the scent of a sleeve to the curve of an eyebrow, carried meaning. Even the strangest practices, like blackened teeth, reflected a culture that valued harmony, subtlety, and discipline above fleeting trends. And so, Japan's rituals of elegance remind us that beauty takes many forms. Sometimes it dazzles with color and gold. Other times, it whispers with fragrance, shadows, and the play of pale skin against crimson lips. In the stillness of these rituals, beauty became a way of life, a quiet devotion to refinement that echoes softly across the centuries. Chapter 8. The Middle East and the Magic of Scents. Across the deserts and fertile valleys of the ancient Middle East, beauty was expressed through fragrance, ritual, and adornment. From the bustling markets of Mesopotamia to the desert palaces of Arabia, the air itself seemed alive with the aroma of oils, spices, and burning incense. In these lands, where the climate was often harsh and unforgiving, the rituals of beauty carried not only practical meaning, but also spiritual and symbolic power. The people of Mesopotamia, some of the earliest city dwellers, were among the first to master the blending of oils and perfumes. Clay tablets dating back thousands of years describe recipes for ointments and balms. These mixtures, crafted from myrrh, frankincense, cedarwood, and other botanicals, were used to soften skin, scent the body, and prepare offerings for the gods. To wear fragrance was not simply to be pleasing to others. It was to walk with a sense of purity, to be in harmony with the divine. Kohl, that enduring cosmetic, played an important role here as well. Both men and women lined their eyes with its dark pigment, believing it protected against the sun's glare and guarded against illness. More than that, it was thought to shield the soul from the evil eye, an unseen force feared across the region. A child might have their eyes lined with kohl, not for vanity, but for protection. In this way, beauty became inseparable from magic and faith. Bathing rituals also carried significance. Though water could be scarce, people valued cleansing as an act of both health and devotion. In some places, oils replaced water, rubbed into the skin, and scraped away to remove dirt. In others, the hammam, the bathhouse, emerged as a social and spiritual space. Here, the body was purified through cycles of steam, scrubbing, and massage, followed by the application of fragrant oils. These rituals soothed the body, refreshed the spirit, and created a sense of communal beauty. Fragrance was the heart of Middle Eastern beauty. The resin of frankincense trees, gathered from the southern Arabian Peninsula, was burned in homes, temples, and palaces. Its smoke was said to carry prayers to heaven. Myrrh, with its deep, resinous scent, was used to embalm the dead, anoint the living, and perfume the skin. Spices like cinnamon and cardamom, carried along trade routes, added new notes to perfumes and oils. To walk into a chamber perfumed with these scents was to step into a world where beauty touched not only the body, but also the spirit. Henna also played a central role. The reddish-brown dye, made from the leaves of the henna plant, was applied to hair, hands, and feet. Intricate patterns adorned brides, warriors, and celebrants, each design carrying meaning fertility, protection, or blessing. To decorate the body with henna was to transform it into a living canvas of beauty and symbolism. Jewelry added another layer of adornment. Gold gleamed in the desert sun, while lapis lazuli, turquoise, and carnelian were set into rings, necklaces, and earrings. These stones were not only beautiful, but believed to carry protective powers. A necklace might guard against misfortune, a ring might symbolize strength, and a pair of earrings might attract good fortune. The shimmer of gold and the sparkle of gemstones were as much talismans as ornaments. Hair care was equally important. Oils infused with herbs were massaged into the scalp to keep hair strong and glossy in the dry climate. Women often braided their hair, weaving ribbons or beads into the plaits, while men shaped their beards with care, perfuming them with scented oils. A well-groomed appearance was a mark of respectability and dignity, admired in both everyday life and ceremonial gatherings. Even in death, these rituals endured. Tombs and graves across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Arabia have been found filled with jars of oils, combs, mirrors, and jewelry. The belief that beauty belonged to the soul as much as the body meant that no one entered the afterlife unadorned. Perfumes and oils accompanied the dead, ensuring their spirits carried fragrance on their eternal journey. Some practices, however, strike us as unusual today. Recipes for perfume sometimes included animal fats or rare substances like ambergris, a waxy material from whales. These ingredients, though strange, were prized for their ability to preserve and carry fragrance. The blending of the bizarre with the beautiful was a hallmark of the Middle Eastern devotion to scent. As the sun set over the desert, the glow of lamps and braziers filled homes and palaces. The air was thick with the perfume of burning incense. Women traced henna patterns onto one another's hands, while men oiled their beards and adjusted golden rings. The day's heat faded into cool night, and with it, the rituals of beauty carried on, connecting body and spirit, the earthly and the divine. The Middle East reminds us that beauty is not only about what can be seen. Sometimes it is about what can be smelled, touched, or felt in the spirit. The magic of scents, the shimmer of gold, the line of kohl around the eye, all of these were bridges between the physical and the unseen. Even the most bizarre mixtures, from oils infused with resins to perfumes made with ambergris, carried meaning that transcended the ordinary. And so, in the quiet desert night, surrounded by fragrance and starlight, we glimpse the beauty rituals of ancient cultures who believed that to adorn the body was to honor the soul. Chapter 9. Africa's tribal traditions across the vast and varied landscapes of Africa. Beauty has always been more than appearance. It is identity, tradition, and storytelling. From the sweeping deserts of the north to the lush forests of the center and the open savannas of the south, communities have developed unique rituals of adornment that express belonging, strength, and spirit. Many of these customs may appear unusual to outside eyes, yet within their cultures they hold profound meaning, turning the body into a living canvas of heritage. One of the most striking traditions is body painting. Using natural materials such as clay, ash, ochre, and plant pigments, men and women decorated their skin with patterns that signified more than beauty. Each color and design carried meaning. White ash could symbolize purity or connection with the spiritual world, while red ochre might represent vitality and life. Among groups like the Himba of Namibia, red ochre mixed with butterfat created a paste called atchais, which women applied daily to their skin and hair. This brilliant red coating protected them from the harsh desert sun, warded off insects, and symbolized life and earth. Scarification was another widespread practice. In cultures where tattoos were less common, patterns were carved or burned into the skin, leaving raised scars that became permanent adornments. These designs were not random. They told stories of ancestry, rites of passage, bravery, and beauty. For many, the process was painful, yet the scars were marks of resilience, strength, and identity. To bear them was to show both endurance and belonging. Hairstyles also carried deep cultural significance. Across Africa, hair was braided, twisted, and styled into elaborate patterns, each with meaning tied to age, status, or community. Among the Yoruba, intricate braids could signal marital status, wealth, or religious devotion. In West Africa, cornrows were not only practical but also symbolic, their patterns echoing traditions passed down through generations. Hairstyles were often adorned with beads, shells, or metal ornaments, transforming the head into a crown of culture and artistry. Jewelry and adornments played a powerful role as well. Necklaces of beads or shells, anklets of brass or copper, earrings of bone or ivory, all served not only to beautify, but to communicate status, wealth, and spirituality. The Maasai of Kenya and Tanzania, for example, became known for their striking beadwork, with colorful necklaces and earrings that spoke of age, role, and community ties. To wear such adornments was not vanity, but participation in a shared cultural language of beauty. Fragrance was also part of ritual. Resins and herbs were burned in ceremonies, scenting both body and spirit. Oils made from shea, baobab, and marula were applied to the skin and hair, offering protection against climate while also softening and beautifying. These oils carried with them the blessings of the land, turning daily care into an act of reverence for nature. Even teeth became part of beauty expression. In some cultures, teeth were filed into points or shaped deliberately, believed to enhance attractiveness or signify courage. Though unusual to outsiders, this practice symbolized the acceptance of beauty as something bold, distinctive, and personal. For many African communities, beauty rituals were not private acts done in solitude, but communal experiences. Women painted one another's bodies for ceremonies. Men adorned themselves together before dances or battles. Elders guided the young through scarification or hair-braiding rituals, passing down both skill and meaning. Beauty here was inseparable from community and tradition. Some practices might seem extreme or bizarre to us now, yet each carried logic within its cultural context. A pattern of scars was not disfigurement, it was a badge of honor. Red ochre was not dirt, it was radiance, protection, and life. The body became a language, telling stories of who a person was, where they came from, and what they believed. Even in death, these rituals endured. Bodies were painted, adorned, or buried with beads and ornaments. The journey into the afterlife was not to be taken plain, but decorated with the same symbols of belonging and beauty that had marked life. As the sun sets over a savanna, imagine a group preparing for a celebration. The air is warm, drums echo in the distance, and laughter fills the evening. Women sit together, carefully braiding hair and applying red ochre to one another's skin. Men paint patterns across their chests and arms, each stroke carrying meaning. Beads catch the firelight, shells clink softly, and the scent of burning herbs drifts through the night. These rituals are not vanity, they are identity, a way of carrying the spirit of community upon the body. Africa's beauty traditions remind us that adornment can be more than personal decoration. It can be memory, resilience, and unity. Some practices may appear bizarre from afar, but within their cultures, they are profound expressions of what it means to be human strong, connected, and beautiful in ways far deeper than the surface. Chapter 10. The Americas Before Colonization, Long Before the Arrival of Europeans. The peoples of the Americas had their own vibrant and complex traditions of beauty. From the towering pyramids of the Maya to the bustling marketplaces of the Aztec capital, from the high peaks of the Andes where the Inca ruled to the forests and plains where smaller communities thrived, beauty rituals were as diverse as the lands themselves. Each culture expressed ideals of adornment and transformation in ways that often appear striking, mysterious, or even bizarre to us today. The Maya, who built great cities across Central America, embraced beauty as both art and spirituality. They painted their bodies with bright pigments for ceremonies, using reds, blues, and yellows derived from minerals and plants. Faces were decorated with patterns that carried symbolic meaning, while jade stone sacred to the Maya was carved into beads, earplugs, and pendants worn by the elite. Jade was considered more precious than gold, a material that symbolized life, fertility, and connection to the gods. To wear jade was to embody not only beauty, but divine favor. The Maya also practiced body modification in ways that might seem unusual today. They shaped their skulls in infancy by binding them with boards, creating elongated heads that were considered elegant and noble. Some filed their teeth into points or inlaid them with jade and turquoise. These practices were not seen as grotesque, but as marks of refinement and high status. To the Maya, the human body was a canvas upon which ideals of beauty and spirituality were inscribed. The Aztecs, ruling from the great city of Tenochtitlan, also embraced bold beauty rituals. They painted their faces and bodies with vivid designs, sometimes daily, sometimes for ceremonies of war or worship. Black obsidian mirrors were used not only to reflect the face, but to divine the unseen, connecting the act of beautification to the spiritual world. Red pigments brightened lips and cheeks, while feathers and ornaments added splendor to hair and clothing. The Aztecs also prized cleanliness, bathing regularly in steam baths called temazcals, where the body was cleansed with heat, herbs, and water. These baths were both practical and sacred, purifying the body while honoring the gods. Among the Aztecs, beauty was tied closely to ritual sacrifice and devotion. Bodies painted for ceremonies became living offerings, their adornments blending beauty with religious symbolism. To decorate oneself was not only to please others, but to honor the divine. Farther south, in the highlands of the Andes, the Inca cultivated their own rituals of adornment. Coca leaves, chewed for energy and focus, were sometimes used in beauty treatments, their juices believed to purify and invigorate the skin. Gold, abundant in the Andes, was worked into elaborate jewelry and ornaments that gleamed in the sunlight, symbolizing the sun god Inti. Feathers from tropical birds were woven into clothing and headdresses, transforming the body into a living expression of the natural world. The Incas also valued long, glossy hair, carefully maintained with oils and combs, a symbol of health and dignity. Tattooing and body painting were practiced across many indigenous groups of the Americas. Designs varied from simple lines to complex patterns, each carrying cultural significance. Tattoos could mark rites of passage, bravery in battle, or spiritual devotion. Painted faces and bodies, often using charcoal or natural dyes, served as both adornment and armor projecting identity, strength, and belonging. In the forests of the Amazon, tribes used bright pigments from plants and clay to decorate their skin. Patterns were painted before dances, rituals, and hunts, their designs carrying protective or spiritual meanings. Some wore large ornaments through their lips, ears, or noses, marks of beauty and identity that connected them to their community. The body, once again, became a living canvas for expression, adorned with the colors and textures of the natural world. What strikes us today as unusual skull shaping, tooth filing, tattooing with bone tools was, in its time, a normal part of life, deeply tied to values of beauty, status, and spirituality. These practices show how varied human ideas of adornment can be, and how creativity transforms even the body itself into art. Even in death, these traditions continued. Maya tombs have been discovered filled with jade ornaments and painted pottery. Inca mummies were adorned with textiles, feathers, and jewelry, prepared for their journey into the afterlife. Beauty was not abandoned at death, but carried forward, a sign of respect, honor, and eternal identity. Picture now a bustling Aztec marketplace, filled with the scents of flowers, herbs, and incense. Women with painted faces sell pigments and perfumes, while men wear feathers and gold that catch the light of the sun. Imagine a Maya noblewoman adjusting her jade earrings, or an Inca priest preparing a golden mask for a ceremony. The sounds of drums echo, and the colors of painted skin, feathers, and ornaments fill the scene with vibrancy. Beauty here was not only about appearance, it was about connection to the earth, the gods, and the community. The Americas before colonization revealed to us a world where beauty was powerful, symbolic, and sometimes extreme. To file a tooth into a sharp point, to inlay a gem into enamel, to reshape a skull, or to paint the body with vivid colors, these acts may seem bizarre now, but they carried meaning that was profound. They remind us that beauty is never fixed, but always shaped by culture, belief, and imagination. And so, in the painted faces, the shining jade, the golden ornaments, and the sacred feathers, we glimpse the beauty rituals of ancient peoples who saw the body not only as flesh, but as canvas, vessel, and offering. Chapter 11. Medieval Europe's Strange Trends. As the great castles and cathedrals of medieval Europe rose toward the sky, beauty was shaped by ideals of status, faith, and a longing to distinguish nobility from common folk. The Middle Ages were a time of contrast spiritual devotion alongside earthly indulgence, elegance beside hardship. And in this era, beauty rituals often took forms that now seem peculiar, even hazardous, yet they revealed the values and anxieties of the time. One of the most striking ideals was pale skin. To appear fair was to signal wealth and privilege, for those who labored in fields grew tanned under the sun. Women of noble birth sought to make their skin as pale as possible, using powders of chalk, ground alabaster, or even poisonous white lead. Some went so far as to apply leeches to their faces to drain blood, leaving their skin paler still. To modern eyes, this seems bizarre. Yet in medieval Europe, pallor symbolized refinement, leisure, and distance from toil. Eyebrows, too, were subject to unusual fashions. During certain periods, women plucked their brows into high arcs or removed them entirely, creating a smooth forehead that was considered elegant. Some even shaved the front of their hairline to create the illusion of a higher, broader forehead, which was thought to reflect intelligence and grace. A smooth brow and lofty forehead framed the pale face like a blank canvas, ready for the careful touch of rouge or powder. Cosmetics were used despite the church's suspicion of vanity. Rouge made from crushed plants or minerals brightened lips and cheeks, while soot or ashes darkened lashes. These enhancements were often subtle, for open extravagance could be criticized as sinful. Yet even within restraint, the desire to beautify endured. Recipes for face masks using honey, egg whites, or herbs circulated among households, promising smoother, fairer skin. Perfume carried special significance in an age when bathing was less frequent. Scents of rose, lavender, and musk were distilled into oils or waters, masking odors and adding refinement. Perfumed gloves became fashionable, and sachets of herbs were carried or worn, both for fragrance and to ward off disease. In a world often shadowed by illness, fragrance became a protective charm as much as a cosmetic pleasure. Hair also reflected status and beauty. Long, flowing locks were admired, though often covered by veils, wimples, or elaborate headdresses. Noble women sometimes bleached their hair with mixtures of saffron, alum, and lye, sitting in the sun to lighten it into golden hues. This pursuit of pale, shining hair echoed the broader fascination with lightness and purity. Men, too, styled their hair with care, wearing it long or cropped according to the fashions of the court. Beards might be trimmed into precise shapes or left to grow as a mark of wisdom. Jewelry adorned both body and garments. Brooches, rings, and belts glittered with precious stones, while pearls were especially prized as symbols of purity. Clothing itself became part of the beauty ritual. Rich fabrics of velvet and silk were dyed in vivid colors and trimmed with fur, announcing wealth as much as personal taste. The body, draped in finery, became a moving display of beauty and power. There were also more unusual practices. Some women used vinegar washes to keep their skin pale and smooth, though the acid could damage the skin over time. Others applied mixtures of ground bones, ox blood, or even mercury to achieve desired effects. Strange concoctions passed down as secret recipes promised everything from glowing skin to eternal youth. These bizarre mixtures revealed both the ingenuity and the desperation of people seeking beauty in an era without modern science. The Church's influence shaped beauty ideals in complex ways. While vanity was condemned, cleanliness and modest adornment were encouraged as signs of discipline and respect for God. Saints and holy figures were often described in glowing terms, radiant faces, shining hair, creating a paradox where beauty was admired even as it was suspect. Women balanced these pressures carefully, seeking to appear virtuous and refined without drawing accusations of excess. In death, beauty was not forgotten. Nobles were often prepared for burial with clean garments, perfumes, and sometimes subtle cosmetics, so they might rest in dignity. Effigies carved in stone captured serene, idealized faces, preserving the medieval vision of beauty for centuries to come. Imagine now a medieval chamber lit by candlelight. A noble woman sits before a polished metal mirror, applying powder to her face, while an attendant braids her hair with ribbons. The air smells of lavender and beeswax. Outside, bells toll from a cathedral, a reminder of faith hovering over the rituals of earthly adornment. She smooths her forehead, high and pale, a mark of elegance in her time. To her, these acts are not strange, but necessary, part of her place in society and her role in a world where appearance carried both honor and judgment. Medieval beauty reminds us of the strange paths humans have taken in pursuit of ideals. Leeches on the skin, lead in the powder, hairlines plucked, and foreheads reshaped. Yet within these rituals lies a constant truth: the desire to be seen, to be admired, to reflect not only the body, but the spirit of an age. And so, in the pale faces, perfumed gloves, and jeweled gowns of the Middle Ages, we glimpse a world where beauty was both a personal ritual and a reflection of faith, class, and culture. Chapter 12. Renaissance Glamour and Risk. The Renaissance was an age of rebirth of art, science, and culture, and beauty was no exception. As Europe emerged from the shadows of the Middle Ages, ideals of adornment became brighter, bolder, and more extravagant. Portraits painted by masters like Botticelli, Titian, and Da Vinci immortalized the beauty standards of the time. And behind each painted face lay a world of rituals, concoctions, and practices that were both glamorous and, at times, dangerous. One of the most coveted features of Renaissance beauty was the pale, luminous complexion. Just as in the Middle Ages, fair skin signified wealth and nobility, separating the elite from those who labored outdoors. Women dusted their faces with white powders made of lead carbonate, a substance that smoothed the skin but slowly poisoned the body. The effects were insidious headaches, hair loss, even death, yet the pursuit of beauty often outweighed the risks. To appear pale and flawless was to embody refinement. Rouge, made from cinnabar, cochineal, or crushed flowers, added color to cheeks and lips. The vivid red stood out sharply against white skin, creating a striking contrast admired by poets and painters alike. Women shaped their lips into delicate rosebud forms with careful application, while a faint flush on the cheeks gave the illusion of health and vitality. Though many pigments were toxic, they were prized for their intensity and longevity. Hair was another canvas of beauty. Blonde hair, in particular, became the fashion ideal. Inspired by the golden-haired figures of Renaissance art, women bleached their hair with harsh mixtures of saffron, alum, and lye, then sat under the sun with wide-brimmed hats that left only their tresses exposed. The process burned and damaged the hair, yet the resulting golden locks were admired as heavenly and divine. Elaborate hairstyles followed braids wound with pearls, veils embroidered with gems, and headdresses adorned with ribbons and lace. To crown the head with beauty was to complete the picture of elegance. Eyebrows and foreheads also reflected curious fashions. In earlier centuries, women had plucked or shaved their brows to create high, smooth foreheads. In the Renaissance, the trend continued, with many women removing brows entirely to create a serene, unbroken expanse of skin. This look emphasized the shape of the eyes, which were often enhanced with dark powders to make them appear larger and more luminous. Perfumes and scented waters grew in popularity, fueled by the trade routes that brought exotic spices and botanicals from the East. Rosewater, orange blossom, and musk filled the air of courts and salons. Perfumes were not only worn on the body, but also infused into gloves, veils, and garments, surrounding the wearer with an aura of fragrance. These scents masked odors, lifted the spirit, and signaled wealth and sophistication. Fashion itself played a central role in beauty. Corsets shaped the body into narrow waists and lifted busts, while gowns of velvet, silk, and brocade shimmered with rich colors. Lace collars framed the pale face, and jewels sparkled on ears, fingers, and necks. Beauty was not only painted onto the body, but draped around it, creating a full image of glamour. Some practices of the Renaissance were deeply bizarre. Women applied face masks made of bread soaked in milk, believing it softened the skin. Others used mixtures of snail slime, vinegar, or even animal fat as treatments. Mercury was sometimes used in creams to remove freckles, though it carried dangerous consequences. The blending of natural remedies with hazardous ingredients reflected both creativity and ignorance, an endless search for youth and perfection. Wigs became fashionable, especially among men. Baldness, a common result of illness or harsh treatments, was often concealed with hairpieces crafted from human or animal hair. These wigs were powdered, perfumed, and styled to match the fashions of the court. Women, too, used false hair to add volume and length, weaving it seamlessly into their own. The Renaissance also tied beauty closely to morality and virtue. A beautiful woman was seen not only as physically appealing, but as embodying grace, chastity, and refinement. Portraits idealized features, smoothing imperfections and heightening symmetry, much as artists today enhance images. In this way, beauty became not just personal, but symbolic of character and status. Even in death, beauty was honored. Bodies were dressed in finery, faces sometimes painted to restore a lifelike glow, and hands adorned with rings. Effigies and portraits preserved the image of elegance, ensuring that beauty transcended the grave. Imagine a Renaissance lady seated before a mirror framed in gilded wood. An attendant dusts her face with pale powder, then carefully paints her lips with crimson pigment. Another combs her golden hair, bleached by weeks of sun and strange mixtures, weaving pearls through the braids. The room is filled with the scent of rosewater, while outside, artists paint and poets write, inspired by her beauty. To her, these rituals are not strange but necessary, part of her role in a society that prizes refinement above all. The Renaissance reminds us of the risks people have taken in pursuit of ideals. Lead, mercury, and lye were as much a part of beauty as roses, pearls, and lace. Yet within these dangers lay a profound devotion to art, glamour, and the expression of human creativity. Beauty here was both bizarre and magnificent, a reflection of an age that sought to elevate life into art. And so, in pale powdered faces, golden hair, jeweled gowns, and perfumed gloves, the Renaissance reveals a world where beauty was glamorous, perilous, and eternal a performance staged daily on the grand theater of life. Chapter 13. Indigenous North American Traditions. Across the vast lands of North America, long before European contact, indigenous peoples cultivated traditions of beauty that were deeply rooted in their environments, their beliefs, and their ways of life. From the icy tundra of the north to the plains, forests, and deserts farther south. Beauty was expressed not only through decoration, but also through identity, spirituality, and survival. These rituals, some subtle and others striking, reveal how deeply intertwined beauty was with culture and community. One of the most common practices across many indigenous groups was the use of paint. Faces and bodies were adorned with pigments derived from natural materials, charcoal, clay, crushed minerals, and plants. Red ochre, in particular, was widely used, symbolizing life, energy, and spiritual power. For some tribes, paint was applied daily. For others, it was reserved for ceremonies, hunts, or warfare. Designs could signify clan, achievements, or protective blessings. To wear paint was not only to beautify, but to transform, to step into a role that was larger than the individual. Hair carried profound importance. Among the Plains tribes, long hair was seen as a source of strength and spiritual power. It was carefully braided, sometimes with beads, feathers, or animal fur woven into the strands. Each braid could hold symbolic meaning, connecting the individual to family, community, or the natural world. Hairstyles often indicated status, age, or role within the tribe. To cut one's hair was an act of mourning, a sign of grief or loss. For men and women alike, hair was a sacred expression of beauty and identity. Tattooing and body modification also appeared in various cultures. Using bone needles and natural pigments, tattoos were etched into the skin, often marking rites of passage, achievements, or spiritual connections. Some designs were geometric, while others depicted animals or natural symbols. Among certain groups, piercings of the nose, ears, or lips added further adornment, sometimes decorated with bone, shell, or stone ornaments. These practices, though perhaps unusual to modern eyes, carried deep meaning within their communities. Clothing and adornment extended beauty beyond the body. Deer hides, carefully tanned and softened, were fashioned into garments decorated with quills, shells, and beads. Before European glass beads were introduced, porcupine quills were dyed with natural colors and woven into intricate patterns. These designs were not merely decorative. They told stories, carried prayers, and reflected cultural identity. To wear a beautifully adorned garment was to embody both personal and communal beauty. Fragrance and cleansing were part of ritual as well. Sweat lodges, used in many regions, served as spaces of purification, where heat and steam cleansed both body and spirit. Herbs such as sage, sweetgrass, and cedar were burned. Their smoke used to purify spaces, clothing, and skin. The scents of these plants were seen as offerings, connecting people with the spiritual world and bringing harmony. To emerge from a sweat lodge, skin glistening and spirit renewed, was to embody both health and beauty. Jewelry added further expression. Necklaces of shells, beads, or carved stones were worn for adornment, protection, or symbolism. In regions near the coasts, shells such as wampum became highly prized, used not only as decoration, but also as currency and symbols of agreement. Feathers, too, held immense meaning. To wear an eagle feather, for instance, was an honor, a mark of bravery and spiritual connection. Beauty here was never simply superficial. It carried the weight of honor, memory, and sacredness. Some traditions may strike us as unusual today. Among certain tribes, teeth were decorated or filed, reflecting bravery or identity. In others, infants' heads were gently shaped to create distinctive forms, seen as marks of nobility or belonging. These practices, though different from modern norms, show the lengths to which humans have always gone to shape the body according to cultural ideals. Even in death, beauty and adornment continued. Bodies were painted with ochre, wrapped in decorated garments, and adorned with jewelry or feathers. These preparations ensured that the deceased entered the spirit world with dignity and connection. Just as in life, beauty was tied to identity, belief, and community. Picture now a scene on the open plains at dusk. A young man sits as his face is painted with red and black designs, preparing for a ceremony. Beside him, women braid each other's hair, weaving in beads and feathers as they laugh and sing. The air is scented with burning sage, the smoke curling into the sky. Children watch, learning the meanings of each pattern, each gesture. Beauty here is not separate from life. It is life, expressed upon the body, shared within the community, and passed down through generations. The indigenous traditions of North America remind us that beauty is as diverse as the lands and peoples who create it. From paint and tattoos to hair and feathers, each ritual was more than adornment. It was language, spirituality, and belonging. What may seem strange or unusual now was, in its time, a profound way of honoring self, community, and the unseen world. And so, in the painted faces, braided hair, quillwork garments, and fragrant smokes, we glimpse a world where beauty was both ordinary and sacred, woven into the very fabric of existence. Chapter 14. Polynesian Island Beauty. Across the islands of the Pacific, surrounded by turquoise waters and endless horizons, Polynesian cultures developed rituals of beauty that were as bold as the ocean and as delicate as the flowers that grew along its shores. These traditions were not only about appearance, they were about identity, spirituality, and connection to the land and sea. In the islands of Samoa, Tonga, Hawaii, and beyond, beauty was expressed in ways that may appear unusual to outsiders, but carry deep meaning within each community. One of the most striking traditions of Polynesian beauty is tatau, the art of tattooing. Far from being merely decorative, tattoos marked heritage, achievements, and spirituality. The patterns, made with bone combs dipped in ink from soot and plant oils, were tapped into the skin with rhythmic precision. The process was painful and lengthy, yet it was seen as an act of endurance and pride. In Samoa, the pea, a tattoo covering a man from waist to knees, symbolized honor, bravery, and service to community. For women, tattoos known as malu were placed on the thighs, representing grace, protection, and readiness for adult life. To wear these designs was to carry one's identity and dignity permanently on the skin. Coconut oil was another cornerstone of beauty rituals. Extracted from the fruit of the palm tree, it was used to moisturize skin, protect against the sun, and give hair a shining, healthy appearance. Before ceremonies and dances, men and women rubbed oil onto their skin, creating a glistening effect under firelight or moonlight. This glow was more than cosmetic. It reflected vitality, health, and connection to the natural world. Flowers played an essential role in adornment. Garlands of blossoms, called lei in Hawaii and eula in Samoa, were worn around the neck, head, or wrists. Each flower carried meaning: the fragrant plumeria for love, the hibiscus for beauty, the orchid for rarity. To present someone with a garland was to honor them, to mark celebration, or to show affection. For festivals and dances, entire communities adorned themselves with flowers, turning gatherings into living gardens of color and scent. Hair, too, was a source of beauty. Men and women wore their hair long, sometimes oiled and perfumed, sometimes adorned with flowers or shells. Styles varied between islands, but the care devoted to hair was universal. Long flowing locks symbolized health and vitality, while the fragrance of scented oils added an aura of elegance. For dancers, the movement of hair became part of performance, swaying with rhythm and grace. Scarification was also practiced in some regions, where patterns were cut into the skin and allowed to heal into raised designs. Like tattoos, these marks carried meaning beyond beauty, signifying bravery, maturity, or spiritual protection. The body was treated as a canvas, each mark telling a story of endurance and belonging. Clothing and ornamentation completed the expression of beauty. Bark cloth, known as tapa, was decorated with intricate patterns using natural dyes. These cloths were worn during ceremonies, transforming the body into a living display of artistry. Shells, bones, and carved wood were fashioned into necklaces, earrings, and armbands, each ornament reflecting the resources of the sea and the creativity of the people. Fragrance was part of daily ritual. Flowers and herbs were crushed into oils or worn fresh, scenting the body with the sweetness of the islands. The air itself was perfumed with blossoms, and people carried this fragrance upon their skin, turning beauty into an experience, not only of sight, but of scent. Even death carried beauty rituals. The deceased were adorned with flowers, oils, and ornaments, prepared to journey into the next world with honor and dignity. Just as in life, beauty remained a sign of respect and belonging. Some practices may appear strange to modern eyes. The endurance of long, painful tattoo sessions, the deliberate cutting of skin, or the constant use of oils and flowers might seem unusual. Yet for the Polynesians, these were not mere vanities. They were ways of inscribing identity, honoring ancestors, and celebrating the sacredness of the body as part of the natural and spiritual world. Imagine a gathering at dusk on a Pacific island. The sky glows with the last light of day, and the sound of drums begins to rise. Men, their skin glistening with coconut oil, display bold tattoos across their bodies, each line telling a story of heritage. Women, adorned with garlands of flowers and perfumed hair, move gracefully in dance, their hands tracing patterns of storytelling in the air. The scent of plumeria mingles with the salt of the sea, and the night becomes a living canvas of beauty, rhythm, and tradition. Polynesian beauty reminds us that adornment can be both earthly and spiritual. A tattoo is not just ink, but a vow. Garland is not just decoration, but a gesture of honor. Oil and fragrance are not mere cosmetics, but offerings to life itself. In these islands, beauty was never separate from identity. It was life inscribed on the body, shared in community, and celebrated beneath the endless sky. Chapter 15. The role of jewelry across cultures, across every continent. Through every age, one form of adornment has remained constant: jewelry. From the earliest beads strung from shells to crowns of gold encrusted with gems, humans have long expressed beauty, power, and identity through objects worn on the body. Jewelry, more than almost any other beauty ritual, carries a universal story, one of status, symbolism, and sometimes the bizarre lengths to which people have gone in the name of adornment. The earliest jewelry, discovered in caves and ancient graves, was made of simple materials: animal teeth, bird bones, shells gathered from far-off shores. To wear such pieces was to carry both memory and meaning. A necklace of shells might link its wearer to the sea, while beads carved from bone might honor the animals that sustained life. These early adornments were not only decorative, they were protective charms, symbols of belonging, and markers of identity. As civilizations grew, jewelry became ever more elaborate. In Mesopotamia, artisans worked gold and silver into intricate earrings and pendants. Lapis lazuli, a brilliant blue stone imported from Afghanistan, was shaped into beads and inlaid into jewelry, treasured as a stone of the gods. To wear lapis was to carry a piece of the divine, its color echoing the heavens themselves. In Egypt, jewelry was not only beauty but power. Gold, abundant and radiant, was considered the flesh of the gods. Pharaohs wore crowns, collars, and rings of gold, often inlaid with turquoise, carnelian, and lapis. Amulets shaped like scarabs, eyes, and ankhs carried protective power, ensuring health and good fortune. Even in death, Egyptians adorned their dead with jewelry, believing these objects would accompany the soul into eternity. The glitter of necklaces, the weight of rings, the shimmer of bracelets, all carried spiritual significance beyond their surface. Greece and Rome continued this tradition, but with their own flair. Greek jewelry emphasized harmony and proportion. often shaped into delicate wreaths of gold leaves or necklaces set with gemstones. Romans, in contrast, embraced extravagance. Pearls were imported at great cost, and women competed to display the largest and most lustrous. Rings became symbols of authority, worn by senators and emperors as markers of office. Wealthy Romans even encrusted their furniture and clothing with gems, blurring the line between adornment and indulgence. In India, jewelry reached new heights of symbolism. Gold bangles, anklets, nose rings, and necklaces were woven into daily life, marking every stage from childhood to marriage. Each piece carried meaning: protection, fertility, status, or blessing. Gems such as diamonds, rubies, and emeralds were chosen not only for beauty, but for their believed influence on fate and fortune. Jewelry here was not only worn, it was part of the spiritual rhythm of life, linking the body to cosmic forces. In China, jade was considered more precious than gold. Smooth and cool, it symbolized purity, protection, and virtue. Jade bangles, pendants, and beads were worn in life and buried with the dead, ensuring safety in the afterlife. The soft clink of jade against jade was thought to soothe the spirit, its beauty lying not in flash but in quiet strength. In Africa, jewelry took many forms, often using materials drawn directly from the land and sea. Beads of glass, shells, ivory, and metal adorned necks and wrists. The Maasai of Kenya and Tanzania became known for their elaborate beadwork, with colors and patterns signaling age, role, and community ties. Brass coils worn around the neck or legs created striking appearances, stretching and reshaping the body into forms that carried cultural meaning. To those outside, such practices might seem strange, but within these communities, they were marks of beauty, pride, and belonging. The Americas, too, held rich traditions. The Maya carved jade into intricate earplugs, while the Aztecs adorned themselves with gold and turquoise. The Inca fashioned massive ornaments of gold to honor the sun god Inti. Feathers, beads, and shells were combined with metal and stone, turning jewelry into a reflection of both nature and divinity. Each piece carried stories, connecting the wearer to gods, ancestors, and the earth itself. Jewelry could also carry bizarre elements. In Europe, powdered gemstones were sometimes consumed as medicine, with the belief that their beauty and strength could be absorbed into the body. Rings were made not only of gold, but sometimes from human hair, worn as tokens of love or mourning. Teeth, claws, and even bones of animals or humans found their way into jewelry, believed to transfer power or memory to the wearer. Across cultures, jewelry was also used as a protective charm. Amulets shaped like eyes, hands, or animals were worn to ward off evil. Rings engraved with prayers or symbols were believed to carry blessings. A simple bead, strung and worn against the skin, could become a guardian as much as an ornament. Picture now a noblewoman of ancient Egypt, her neck heavy with a wide collar of gold and turquoise, each bead catching the flicker of lamplight. Imagine a Greek bride, her hair crowned with a delicate wreath of golden leaves. Or a Maasai elder, her chest covered with layers of beaded necklaces that clink softly as she walks. Across time and place, jewelry has turned the body into a canvas, carrying not only beauty, but memory, faith, and identity. The role of jewelry in beauty rituals reminds us that humans have always reached beyond the ordinary. A stone is not merely a stone when it gleams upon the chest. A bead is not merely a bead when it carries the story of a people. Whether made of shells or gold, ivory or jade, jewelry connects the body to something larger: the land, the spirit, the divine. And so, in the shimmer of gems, the weight of bangles, and the soft clink of beads, we glimpse a beauty that is both bizarre and timeless. Jewelry has always been more than decoration. It is the language of humanity, spoken in metal, stone, and shell, across every culture, in every age. Chapter 16. dangerous and bizarre practices throughout history. Beauty has inspired devotion, creativity, and ritual, but it has also led people down paths of risk and danger. Across cultures and centuries, men and women have endured pain, used poisonous substances, and reshaped their bodies in extraordinary ways, all in pursuit of an ideal. These practices, while bizarre to us today, remind us of the sacrifices humans have made to align themselves with their culture as vision of beauty. One of the most notorious examples is the use of lead-based cosmetics. In ancient Rome and later in Renaissance Europe, white lead was ground into powders and creams, creating the pale, smooth complexion that was so highly prized. Applied daily, it masked blemishes and gave the skin a luminous glow. But over time, the poison seeped into the body, causing headaches, hair loss, rotting teeth, and even death. Yet for centuries, the allure of pale skin outweighed the hidden cost. Mercury was another hazardous ingredient. Used in ointments to remove freckles or lighten the skin, it promised beauty while slowly poisoning those who applied it. Some women even used mercury to create lip color, producing a bright red that stood out vividly against pale skin. The result was glamorous in the moment, but the long-term effects were devastating. Hair, too, was subjected to extreme treatments. In Renaissance Italy, women bleached their hair with harsh mixtures of lye, alum, and sulfur, sitting in the sun for hours to achieve golden locks. The process burned the scalp and damaged the hair, but the result was admired as angelic. In other times and places, hair was dyed with strange concoctions, ashes, animal fats, or even crushed insects to create desired shades. Beauty demanded both patience and pain. Body modification practices could be equally extreme. In China, foot binding reshaped young girls' feet into the tiny lotus shape admired for centuries. The process began in childhood, when the bones were still soft, and involved breaking and tightly binding the feet so they curled inward. The result was considered elegant and desirable, but it left women with lifelong pain and disability. To us, it seems unimaginable, yet to families in imperial China, it was a pathway to status and marriage. In parts of Africa and Asia, neck stretching was practiced with brass or copper coils placed around the neck from a young age. As more coils were added, the weight pressed the collarbone and ribs downward, creating the appearance of an elongated neck. This look was seen as graceful and beautiful, a mark of tradition and identity. Yet the practice placed strain on the body, altering bone structure permanently. Scarification, found in many cultures, involved cutting or burning designs into the skin, leaving raised scars that formed permanent patterns. The process was painful and carried risks of infection, yet it was embraced as a way to mark beauty, maturity, or bravery. What seemed like disfigurement to outsiders was, within its culture, a deeply meaningful adornment. Dental modification also carried risks. Among the Maya, teeth were filed into sharp points or drilled to insert small jewels. While the effect was striking, the process must have been excruciating without modern tools. Yet the willingness to endure such pain shows the power of beauty ideals across cultures. Perfume, too, sometimes came with bizarre elements. In the Middle East and Europe, ambergris, a waxy substance from the intestines of whales, was prized as a fixative for fragrances. Though its origin was strange and unappealing, it was treasured as a rare and valuable ingredient. The result was perfumes that clung to the skin and garments, symbols of luxury created from the most unlikely source. Even fashion demanded sacrifice. Corsets, popular in Renaissance and later European fashion, reshaped the body into narrow waists and lifted busts. Worn tightly, they restricted breathing, compressed organs, and sometimes caused fainting. Yet they remained in style for centuries, praised for the elegant silhouette they created. Some practices blurred the line between ritual and ordeal. In Polynesia and the Americas, tattooing with bone tools was painful and lengthy, yet it was embraced as both beauty and spiritual initiation. In Japan, the blackening of teeth, though not physically harmful, required constant upkeep with iron-rich solutions that stained permanently. These practices, while strange to us, reveal the lengths people would go to embody their culture's version of refinement. Even the simplest adornments could carry hidden dangers. Powders made of ground gemstones, once thought to heal or beautify, sometimes poisoned those who consumed or applied them. The pursuit of bright colors and striking effects often led to ingredients that, though effective in appearance, were destructive in reality. Imagine a Renaissance lady applying white powder to her face, unaware of the slow poison it carries. Picture a Chinese girl, her feet bound tightly as her family praises her endurance. Envision a woman tightening her corset strings, her breath shallow but her silhouette admired. These images, though unsettling, remind us of the power beauty holds, shaping lives and bodies in ways both creative and cruel. Dangerous and bizarre practices reveal the shadow side of human devotion to beauty. They show how ideals can drive people to sacrifice comfort, health, and even life itself. Yet they also remind us of the universality of desire, the longing to belong, to be admired, to embody what one's culture holds as beautiful. And so, in laid powders, bound feet, stretched necks, scarred skin, and corseted waists, we glimpse a history where beauty was both radiant and perilous. These rituals may seem extreme, but they are part of the same story we still live today. The endless, complex pursuit of beauty. Chapter 17. Beauty and Power. Throughout history, beauty has never existed in isolation. It has always been tied to power used by rulers to project authority, by elites to display wealth, and by entire societies to enforce order. What we now call beauty rituals were often more than personal choices. They were tools of influence, symbols of status, and reflections of who held control. The link between beauty and power, though sometimes strange or unsettling, reveals how deeply appearance has shaped the course of human history. In the courts of ancient Egypt, beauty was political. Pharaohs and queens adorned themselves with rich cosmetics, elaborate wigs, and golden jewelry, projecting images of divinity and strength. Cleopatra, remembered not only for her wit, but also for her carefully cultivated allure, was said to bathe in milk and wear perfume so potent that visitors could smell her presence before they saw her. Her beauty was more than personal. It was a weapon, a means of diplomacy and rule. In her presence, beauty and power became indistinguishable. In imperial China, women of the court followed beauty standards that signaled loyalty and refinement. Pale faces powdered with rice flour, elaborate hairstyles supported by jade pins, and even the painful ritual of foot binding were markers of belonging to the upper class. To adhere to these practices was to display not only beauty, but also alignment with the values of the ruling dynasty. The body became a political statement, reinforcing the social order through visible signs of elegance and restraint. The courts of medieval and Renaissance Europe carried similar connections. Nobles and monarchs wore clothing and adornments that set them apart from common people. Fabrics dyed in rare colors like purple or deep crimson were reserved for royalty, their expense alone a display of power. Queens and noblewomen painted their faces with white lead, rouged their cheeks, and styled their hair with gems and pearls. To appear beautiful was to embody authority, to reflect the wealth and dominance of the class one represented. Men, too, wielded beauty as power. Kings and emperors wore crowns and jewels, their beards oiled and perfumed, their garments embroidered with gold thread. Armor was polished not only for protection, but also to glitter in the sunlight, transforming the battlefield into a stage of intimidation and spectacle. Beauty in men often signaled strength, vitality, and divine favor qualities that reinforced their rule. In the Americas, beauty was similarly linked to authority. Maya kings adorned themselves with jade ornaments and elaborate headdresses, towering structures of feathers and gold that proclaimed their status. Aztec rulers painted their faces and bodies for ceremonies, their adornments reflecting both earthly power and spiritual connection. Among the Inca, gold was the metal of the sun, and its use in jewelry and ornamentation reinforced the ruler's role as the living representative of the sun god Inti. Here, beauty was inseparable from religion, governance, and cosmic order. Religious institutions also shaped beauty as a form of power. In medieval Europe, while the church warned against vanity, it also celebrated saints and holy figures described as radiant, glowing with divine beauty. Monks and priests wore simple garments that reflected discipline and humility, contrasting with the finery of nobles. This difference in appearance reinforced authority, dividing sacred from worldly power while still acknowledging the role of beauty in both. Beauty rituals could even act as barriers between classes. The elaborate tattoos of Polynesian chiefs, the scarification patterns of African elders, the jeweled crowns of European monarchs, all created visual lines between rulers and subjects. To be adorned in certain ways was to belong to the elite. To lack such adornment was to remain ordinary. The body became a tool of hierarchy, its beauty a signal of where one stood in the balance of power. At times, beauty was wielded as protest or defiance. In certain African and indigenous American cultures, adornments and body modifications rejected outside influence, preserving traditions against colonization. In these cases, beauty was not only personal or political, but also a form of resistance, a way of holding power against domination. The link between beauty and power also appeared in gender dynamics. Across cultures, women's beauty was often celebrated yet controlled, framed as both their strength and their responsibility. The elaborate rituals of painting, binding, or adorning the body could empower women, granting them influence in court or community, but they could also restrict, confining them to narrow ideals set by others. Men, meanwhile, often shaped beauty standards through their authority, deciding what was admired and what was condemned. Imagine now a royal court, whether in Egypt, China, or Europe. A ruler sits upon a throne, draped in jewels and fine garments, their face painted or adorned according to the ideals of the age. Courtiers surround them, each vying to display beauty that signals status and loyalty. In this setting, beauty is not vanity, it is currency, a language of power understood by all. The bond between beauty and power is both timeless and complex. It shows how appearance has been used to control, to inspire, to intimidate, and to elevate. Behind every ritual, whether painting the face, binding the feet, wearing a crown, or tattooing the skin, lies not only the desire to be admired, but also the drive to shape society through the language of beauty. And so, in gilded crowns, painted faces, jeweled garments, and scarred skin, we glimpse the history of beauty as power, sometimes dangerous, sometimes liberating, always significant. These rituals remind us that beauty has never been merely about looking attractive. It has always been about who holds influence, who commands respect, and who defines the world around them. Chapter 18. Reflections on Beauty Through Time. As we come to the end of our journey through history's most unusual beauty rituals, it becomes clear that beauty has never been a simple matter of appearance. Across every culture and every age, it has been a language, a ritual, and a form of meaning-making. From powders ground from poisonous minerals to tattoos etched into skin with bone, from garlands of flowers to the glitter of gold, humanity has always sought to shape the body into a reflection of its ideals. These practices, however strange they may seem today, reveal timeless truths about who we are. One truth is that beauty has always been tied to identity. In Africa, scarification and hairstyles told the stories of ancestry and belonging. In Polynesia, tattoos marked a person's role and honor within their community. In indigenous North America, hair, feathers, and paint spoke of strength, grief, or celebration. The body became a canvas of self and society, carrying meaning that went far beyond the surface. Another truth is that beauty has always been linked to spirituality. Egyptian kohl was applied not only to enhance the eyes, but to protect against evil. Middle Eastern perfumes carried prayers upward in their smoke. Indian henna patterns blessed brides with fertility and fortune. Even the simplest rituals and oil rubbed into the hair, a flower worn behind the ear, often carried echoes of the sacred. To beautify oneself was to honor not only the body, but also the unseen. Beauty has also reflected power. Queens, kings, and nobles used adornment to set themselves apart: gold crowns, jeweled robes, painted faces, and elaborate hairstyles. The paleness of a noblewoman's skin, the glitter of a Roman matron's pearls, or the towering headdress of a Maya king all declared authority without words. To be beautiful in certain ways was to embody status, control, and sometimes even divinity. But perhaps the most revealing truth is that beauty has often come at a cost. Lead powders poisoned, corsets compressed, feet were bound, and bones were scarred or reshaped, all in pursuit of ideals that demanded endurance and sacrifice. Pain and danger walked hand in hand with glamour and refinement. What strikes us as bizarre today was, for those who lived it, a pathway to acceptance, honor, and admiration. Yet not all rituals were harsh. Many were gentle, rooted in care and connection. Oils to soothe dry skin, herbs to scent the hair, baths to refresh body and spirit. These reflect the human desire not only to be admired, but to feel well. Beauty, in many forms, was as much about health, balance, and harmony as it was about surface appearance. As we reflect on these practices, we see that beauty is never fixed. It changes with time, place, and culture, always shifting, always redefined. What was once admired, the pale forehead of a medieval lady, the bound feet of a Chinese noblewoman, the blackened teeth of a Japanese aristocrat, might seem strange or even troubling now. And yet, the impulse behind it remains familiar: the desire to belong, to express, to transcend the ordinary. Imagine for a moment all these rituals together: a Roman woman painting her lips with cinnabar, an Egyptian queen bathing in perfumed oils, a Polynesian man receiving his first tattoo, an African girl braiding her hair with beads, a Renaissance lady tightening her corset, a Japanese noble applying white powder to her face. Different lands, different times, yet all connected by a shared human impulse to transform the body into something more than itself. Beauty, at its heart, is a story we tell about ourselves. It is the language of culture, the reflection of values, and the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. The bizarre, the dangerous, the gentle, and the extravagant all are chapters in that story, carried across centuries and continents. And so, as we close this journey, let us remember that beauty has always been more than skin deep. It is memory, identity, ritual, and power. It is fleeting, yet it endures and echoes on painted pottery, in carved jewelry, in ancient texts, and in the stories we continue to tell. As you drift now towards sleep, carry with you the quiet realization that beauty, however strange or fleeting, is part of what makes us human. Across time and culture, it has bound us together, reflecting not only how we wish to look, but how we wish to live, love, and be remembered. And so we reach the end of our journey through the curious, strange, and fascinating beauty rituals of the ancient world. From the shimmering oils of Egypt to the painted faces of Japan, from the tattoos of Polynesia to the jeweled crowns of Europe, we've seen how humans have always sought to transform themselves, sometimes in ways gentle and graceful, other times through practices that now seem bizarre or even dangerous. What each ritual shows us is that beauty has never been just about appearance. It has always been about meaning, identity, power, spirituality, and the eternal human desire to leave a mark upon the world. If you've enjoyed this story, I invite you to subscribe to History for Sleep, where each night we explore another chapter of the past designed to help you relax, unwind, and drift into rest. And in the comments, let me know which ritual fascinated you the most, or simply share when you like to listen. Your thoughts and ideas will help guide where our journey goes next. For now, close your eyes, take a slow breath, and let the echoes of history carry you gently into sleep. The past is filled with endless stories, and tomorrow night, another one awaits. Good night.